Raising the Dead. Raising the Dead is a Siddhi called the Mrit Sanjivani Vidya, a mental ability that results in a physical effect, and it was once a worldwide ability in many mystic movements. Jesus in the New Testament. Jesus is probably the first person Christians think of when mention is made of raising the dead. But we will see in a moment that he was not the only one to do so. Jesus, Mark 5, Jairus' daughter. While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why bother the teacher any more?" Overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, "Don't be afraid, just believe." He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James and John, the brother of James. And when they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion, with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this and told them to give her something to eat. And other examples of Jesus raising the dead also exist. The Gospel of Luke, chapter 7, the raising of the son of the widow of Nain. Soon afterwards, Jesus went to a town named Nain, accompanied by his disciples and a large crowd. And when he arrived at the gate of the town, a funeral procession was coming out. A young man had died, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and a large crowd from the town was with her. And when the Lord saw her, his heart was filled with pity for her, and he said to her, "Do not weep." Then he walked over and touched the coffin, while the pallbearers stood still. Jesus said to the dead man, "Young man, I say to thee, arise." And he who was dead sat up and began to talk, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. Then they all were filled with awe and praised God, and they said, "A great prophet has risen among us, and God has visited his people." The raising of Lazarus. The miracle of the raising of Lazarus led directly to the decision of Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin to kill Jesus. The story is told in the Russian Orthodox Church's Catechism of St. Philaret. In the Roman Catholic version, found in the New Testament, the raising of Lazarus is recounted only in the Gospel of John, John 11:1-44. But in both versions, Jesus raises Lazarus of Bethany from the dead 4 days after his entombment. But lest we forget, Jesus was not the only person in the Bible to raise the dead. The next example comes from the Old Testament. Elijah in the Old Testament. Elijah, the widow and the widow's son. 1 Kings 17:17 to 18. After this, the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, became ill, and his illness was so severe that there was no breath left in him. And she said to Elijah, "What have you against me, O man of God? You have come to me to bring my sin to remembrance and to cause the death of my son." And he said to her, "Give me your son." And he took him from her arms and carried him up into the upper chamber where he lodged, and laid him on his own bed. And he cried to the Lord, "O Lord my God, have you brought calamity even upon the widow with whom I sojourn, by killing her son?" Then he stretched himself upon the child 3 times, and cried to the Lord, "O Lord my God, let this child's life come into him again." And the Lord listened to the voice of Elijah, and the life of the child came into him again, and he revived. And Elijah took the child and brought him down from the upper chamber into the house, and delivered him to his mother. And Elijah said, "See, your son lives." And the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in your mouth is truth." Elisha. Elisha, another Old Testament prophet, also raised a dead child. Kings 4:18 to 37. When Elisha came into the house, he saw the child lying dead on his bed. So he went in and shut the door behind the 2 of them and prayed to the Lord. Then he went up and lay on the child, putting his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes, and his hands on his hands. And as he stretched himself upon him, the flesh of the child became warm. Then he got up again and walked once back and forth in the house, and went up and stretched himself upon him, and the child opened his eyes. Sai Baba. Although we might be persuaded by these examples that this Siddhi actually only occurred to the people in the Bible, we would be wrong. Our next example describes a case history from India involving Satya Sai Baba that occurred more recently in the 20th century. We have slightly abridged for the video, but our website has the full version. Howard Murfitt. Sai Baba, man of miracles. Mr. V. Radhakrishna was a factory owner from Kuppam, Andhra Pradesh, and about 60 years of age, when in 1953 he paid a visit to Puttaparthi. With him went his wife, his daughter Vijaya, and the latter's husband, Mr. K.S. Hemchand. Mr. Radhakrishna was suffering from gastric ulcers and was in a very bad way. One of his reasons for visiting the ashram was the hope that he might get relief from his frightful suffering. Once, when Baba came to visit him, Radhakrishna said that he would prefer to die rather than go on suffering the way he was. One evening, Radhakrishna went into a coma, and his breathing was that of a dying man. Alarmed, the wife dashed off to see Swami. The latter came to the room, looked at the patient, said, "Don't worry, everything will be all right," and left. Mr. K.S. Hemchad, the son-in-law, brought a male nurse who, after failing to find any pulse, gave as his opinion that Mr. Radhakrishna was so near death that there was no possibility of saving him. About an hour after this, the patient became very cold. The three anxious relatives heard what they thought was the death rattle in his throat and watched him turning blue and stiff. Vijaya and her mother went to see Baba. When they told him that Radhakrishna seemed to be dead, he laughed and walked away to his bedroom. But after a while, Swami came in and looked at the body, but went away again without saying or doing anything. On the morning of the third day, the body was like a corpse, dark, cold, quite stiff, and beginning to smell. Other people who came to see and sympathize told Mrs. Radhakrishna that she should have the corpse removed from the ashram. But she replied, "Not unless Swami orders it." But some even suggested that as the man was dead and the body smelling, it should be cremated. When Mrs. Radhakrishna went upstairs again to tell Baba what people were saying to her, he answered, "Do not listen to them, and have no fear, I am here." Then he said that he would come down to see her husband soon. About 2:30 in the afternoon of the third day, Baba came. Mrs. Radhakrishna went towards Baba and burst into tears. Vijaya too began to cry. Gently Baba asked the tearful women and sorrowful Mr. Hemchad to leave the room. As they left, he closed the door behind them. They do not know, no man knows, what happened in that room when there were only Swami and the dead man. But after a few minutes, Baba opened the door and beckoned the waiting ones in. There, on the bed, Radhakrishna was looking up at them and smiling. Amazingly, the stiffness of death had vanished and his natural colour was returning. Swami turned to the wife. "I have given your husband back to you," he said. "Now get him a hot drink." The family stayed a few more days, then with Baba's permission returned to their home in Kupam. The bad gastric ulcers and complications had vanished forever. A kahuna brings a drowned boy back from the dead in Hawaii. Our final example is from Hawaii and involves a kahuna priest mystic, Max Freedom Long. The secret science behind miracles. Dr. Brigham, during one of his field trips in search of rare indigenous plants in Hawaii, took refuge in a coastal village during a very severe storm. In the storm, a native village lad of about 16 was drowned. All efforts to revive him failed, and a kahuna living some distance away was summoned. The kahuna, an old man, arrived and began work about 8 hours after the accident. The boy's body was cold, and when examined by Dr. Brigham shortly before the arrival of the kahuna, seemed to have begun to stiffen in rigor mortis. The kahuna sat down near the body and set to work to use his psychic powers to learn what had become of the lad's 2 spirits. In this work, as he later explained, he had the help of several spirit friends. The boys' selves were found, wandering in a confused state, and brought back to the body, being urged to remain there and make every possible effort to re-enter it. The body was warmed, and while the Kahuna applied his hands to it, he gave of his own vital force. He also used verbal suggestion to cause the return into the body. After about an hour, he announced that the spirits of the boy were entering the body. Gradually the flesh became warmer, the heart began to beat, and the boy opened his eyes. Dr. Brigham kept track of the Hawaiian lad for a number of years, and there never seemed to have been appreciable after effects from the death by drowning. In conclusion, these examples worldwide show that the skill to raise the dead belonged only to mystics. Jesus was an Essene. This mystic sect flourished from the 2nd century BC to the 1st century AD. Essenes lived throughout Roman Judea. Sai Baba formed his own mystic movement in India. The Kahuna were a mystic movement operating in the Pacific. And both Elijah and Elisha are regarded as mystics within the Kabbalah. But although Sufism is supposedly the mystic arm of Islam, Sufism has actually been declared an unwanted branch. According to Wikipedia, Sufis have been murdered in Pakistan, Jammu and Kashmir, Somalia, Mali, Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Iran, and Wahhabist Saudi Arabia. Indeed, since the early 19th century, numerous Sufi shrines have been destroyed. As such, raising the dead was eradicated from Islam, as only mystics know how it is done.